Are you starting a new photography business or any business for that matter and wondering how to name it? The next few minutes are going to give you a clarity on just that. Also, as a bonus at the end of the video, you have all the steps that need to be taken immediately as soon as you decide upon your brand name. So without further ado, let's dive in. Hi, I'm Ashwini Neethan, a maternity and newborn photographer based out of India. In this channel, we discuss everything maternity, newborn and life. And without wasting a lot of your time, let's jump right into the video and give you what you have come here for. So there are three main ways in which a brand can be named. First thing would be their name. The second option would be something related to their niche. The third option is something generic, where there's no mention of the name of the photographer or the niche in which they are working. Let us discuss the advantages and disadvantages of all the three options. If you're not a photography brand, then the third option may not suit you much, because let us see a few examples. Take for example Virgin Group or Xerox. These are very common names which can be applied to all niches, and the person who is listening to those brand names may not have a clear idea as to what is the brand about until and unless they become household names. Say for example Xerox, that is the name of a company. So what do you do when you want to take a photocopy? You just say Xerox. The word Xerox has become a household name. Until and unless the brand gets the value and becomes a household name, you will not be knowing what it is. So for your photography business, the first two options are the best. So let us break down those two options and elaborate more on that, so you can clearly decide what do you like and what matches your taste well. So the first option is straightforward. Your name as your brand name. This suits perfectly for photographers. Say for example Jimmy Nelson Photography or Mats Peter Iverson Photography. By the way, I love his landscapes photos, and when I was a travel photographer, I used to look up to him and I used to follow him a lot and have learned a lot from him, and his images are so beautiful. If you haven't checked him out, go check him out. Okay, so wait. Before we jump in and decide that your name is going to be your brand name, let us ponder over these questions. First one, are you the only one who is the face of the brand? Like the above said photographers, one was famous for his unique portraits and the other one was famous for his landscape images. So they don't have a conglomerate of photographers who go on their behalf and do the job. They do all the clicking themselves. They may or they may not have editors who's going to edit their photos, but the clicking, the framing, everything is done by them. So the person who's taking their service clearly knows that this is the person who will be responsible for the photos I buy or the images they will be producing for that particular brand or for the particular company. So it's clear that people associate a brand name with a face. Again, there are upsides and downsides of this approach. So let us see what is the upside and biggest downside. The biggest advantage is that the photographer can shift between niches and it doesn't affect the brand value, as people associate the brand with the name of the person and the face of the person. Say I name my photography business as Ashwini Photography and I start as a food photographer. Maybe a couple of years down the line, I decide that I want to be a portrait photographer. I can easily shift between niches, as people who already know me as a good food photographer can trust me easily in delivering their best portraits, as they already associate my face with the brand and the brand value is good. So they're going to trust me easily, and it'll be easy to kickstart my photography journey in another niche as compared to starting off again with a different brand name. So this is the biggest advantage of having your name as your photography brand name. And the biggest downside is if the photographer adds few more photographers into the brand and they're giving services to their clients, it may not go well with the prospective clients, the future clients, or the clients who are already existing with them, as they'll be skeptical as to whether the main photographer will be working with them or their subordinates will be working. This will bring a differentiation among the people. They're coming in for the person, but they're not getting the person services. This is one thing you should look before naming your brand as your photography business. A very good example of this is my friend Sudhanva Vashishta, who is a wedding photographer, and his brand name was Vashishta Photography. Recently, he renamed his brand as Studio V Weddings because they were working as a team and he wanted to include the efforts of all the team members into the name. So the name Studio V Weddings made a more sensible name than keeping the name as the photographer's name itself. Another scenario where the first approach doesn't work is when your name is a very common name and there are a lot of people who are keeping the same name, as people get confused as to whose photos was this, whether that photographer's photos or this photographer's photos, as their names are the same, and there's a lot of confusion in that way. If this was the biggest advantage and disadvantage of naming your name as your photography brand name, let us discuss the pros and cons of naming your photography business into a name which signifies your niche. With this approach, again, there are advantages and disadvantages. Talking about the advantages of this approach, it's easier for the brand or the prospective client to associate your brand with the photography niche you're working in. This will also act as a disadvantage as the brand's name will get fixated with the niche, and tomorrow if the photographer wants to explore another niche, they have to start off with a different brand name and they cannot continue with this. So if you want to experiment with the niche and you have not yet found out the perfect niche for your photography, it is recommended that you keep your name as your photography brand name and then you explore different niches and then you decide which suits your interest the best and you can go ahead with that later. Say for example XYZ Weddings or ABC Decors. For example, my friend, her brand name is Food Lab and she is a food photographer. As soon as I say Food Lab, it clearly signifies that it's something related to food. Say for example, my brand name Tiny Yawns Photography. When I decided on the name, I decided that I'll be doing only newborns, okay, newborns and newborns only. But later 1.5 years down the line, I decided I'll do maternity photo shoots also because I was getting a lot of requests from moms saying that please do my maternity shoot so I'll be comfortable giving my baby to you. So I decided I'll go into maternity photography also. But I started to think whether the name Tiny Yawns will reflect well into maternity photography too. Did you see what just happened there? I named as Tiny Yawns thinking that I'll do newborns only, but I did start maternity photography also. So I started to think whether it's going to match or not. But then later I decided that I'll stick on to the name because I'm just doing maternity and newborns only and not foraging into wildlife or food photography as such. So think a little deep before you decide on your brand name as to what are your brand values, what you're going to do, what is your plan 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, so that your brand name clearly matches your vision. There's also one more option where there's a fusion of the point 1 and point 2 where you can keep your name as well as your niche name as your brand name. But again, the advantages and disadvantages of it almost falls down to the second point where you're sticking definitely to your niche only because your niche name is added as a photography brand. Okay, now let us think you're going to the second approach. You have clearly defined your niche and you want to find a very good brand name for your photography business. So let me take you through a few steps which you need to take to get a good name for your brand. First, write down a few words that clearly describe your niche. And once you have the list of those words, then you need to see what matches your vision of your brand and what matches your personality. Mix and match these words and then make a choice of your own which suits your taste well, and also make sure that this name has already not been taken by somebody else. How do you check this? Go on social media and just type in the name and you'll clearly know whether the name has been taken or not. Now that you already have a few names, you have zeroed down onto a couple of names or maybe 2-3 names. Now it's time for you to just relax, sleep over these names for a couple of days, and eventually by the end of 2-3 days, you'll clearly know which is the name you're inclined towards and you'll definitely choose that as your brand name. To be honest, these are the exact steps I took to name my brand as Tiny Yawns Photography. And so many of my clients love the name. They say that's such a thoughtful name because you're doing newborns and their tiny yawns have been captured. I feel so happy when they do that. But of course, there are some downsides too. People end up calling us teeny yawns or even tiny yawns. I'm like, all right. Tiny Yawns, please tell me. So it's okay. I like the name and a lot of people love it too. And it clearly describes my niche. Love with it. Again, a few pointers to keep in mind while deciding your brand name. First one, don't keep too cheesy words or cheesy names. When I say cheesy, you understand. Don't use words like awesome and all that in your brand name. That is good for a conversational tone, but not for a brand name. And the second point is think of your brand, what it represents 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years down the line. So keep a name that is evergreen and that's going to be in trend, or it is valid even like 15-20 years after you start your work. Also keep the brand name very easy to pronounce. As I told, I thought Tiny Yawns was very easy and very recognizable, and I also told what people call Tiny Yawns as, so it's okay, I like it. Alright, so you followed this perfect formula and you have a good name for your business. Now, once you have a set brand name for your business, so what are the immediate steps you need to take? The first step is go block your domain name of the brand name, what you want to use. Say for example, as soon as I decided about Tiny Yawns Photography and found out that there is no other brand called Tiny Yawns Photography, the first thing I did is went and bought the domain name Tiny Yawns Photography. The same goes with Tiny Yawns Education, where I'm teaching photographers the tips and tricks and how to get into newborn photography and the nuances in the maternity photography. The first thing I did was I went and bought Tiny Yawns Education domain name. The next thing is you need to do is go to all the social media channels where you want to be present in and then claim claim those handles for yourself by creating a page in your brand name. So this is going to make sure you're going to have a unique handle name with your brand name in it, and nobody else has taken that. And with that, it's a wrap. Hope you liked the video. Please do come back for all the future videos, what I'm going to do by clicking on the subscribe button below, and do click on the bell icon to get notified every time I post the video. And that's it. See you in the next video. Bye. If you're not a photography brand, then but actually, what do you call? So what do you call when you? It is easier for the prospective client to assess it.